Back on TYT Sports, Francis and Jason. An interesting clip for you today, so be prepared with your fingers at the ready. Do some stretching, because I'm sure you're going to comment in the section below. We're talking about biggest busts of all time in the world of sports. So we're talking about individual athletes, or they can be part of a team, of course, but just athletes in general who have been the biggest busts throughout their, or even if they managed to obtain a career. Some of them didn't even get to that stage. So I wanted to throw it to you first, Jason. I'm anxious, I'm curious about your decision. So who are the biggest sports busts? And you cannot go to the Knicks. Don't go to your Knicks.
No,
go to.
Knicks didn't have too many busts besides like our entire ownership. But let's go to the two cards because we have a list, at least from Bleacher Report, because I disagree with some of these right off the bat. These are American sports and Francis, except Freddie Adu. No matter what American media outlet runs it, if we're talking about busts or what the great hope was going to be, Freddie Adu's on that list.
Always in there.
But DeJuan Wagner was filthy in college and just never got his game together all that well when it came to Cleveland or Golden State. And guys like, the problem I have with like Bleacher Report's list for the most part is like Vin Baker was like a 3 or 4 time All-Star and then became bad. Soriano had some amazing years with the Yankees and then became, or didn't live up to his hype afterwards. It's more the second card I think is a more better example of busts and includes some people that I would consider. Vince Young, Greg Oden, and Jamarcus Russell I think are 3 when it comes to the NFL and NBA that are busts. Vince Young put the team on his back when it came to Texas in one of the greatest college football games of all time and single-handedly beat USC, who was going for a three-peat, who hadn't lost a game in 3 years. Pete Carroll, they were on top of the world. They were getting a little bit cocky. They were showboating. They had Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart and Glendale White and just this elite defense, elite offense. Everything was clicking, but Vince Young said no. And you watch that and you go, man, and this is like part of the psychology of sports. Yep. We love winners. We love the idea of players doing something like more so insurmountable that you start to root for them. Vince Young seemed like he had the tangibles to be a good NFL quarterback, and then we also find out how quickly it is that the quarterback position is the hardest position across all American sports. I'm not going to say it's the hardest position in all of sports, just American sports, right? We've discussed this before with Ben Mank and all that stuff. Vince Young was somebody I think many people hoped to be great, but he wasn't. He just wasn't good at the NFL level. The game got too fast.
Yeah, the idea of a great quarterback who maybe does something a little different is something that I've noticed that Americans love to kind of jump on board with. Like Johnny Manziel, not, I would say, the biggest quarterback in the history.
But he beat Alabama.
Yeah, liked to run a lot, and he had a very good spell in college, and everyone wanted him to be, because of his attitude and the character that comes along with it, everyone wanted him to be great. I consider him a bust. A lot of people consider him a bust already.
He's like literally busted.
RG3 as well, very similar. I mean, he's not to the same level as Johnny Manziel, but again, it's someone that attracted so much attention in college. And this is a point I was going to make. With my athletes, when I'm going to talk about, obviously, world football, most footballers who happen to get in front of the audience in order for you to judge them have already done something brilliant to get there. Because the college system here gives you the opportunity to see these athletes before they've even managed to make the professional level.
So that's a really good point. Therefore, who would you consider some of the biggest transfer busts?
So
throwing a ton of money, comes in, does terrible, like Falcao?
Yeah, Falcao is undoubtedly was on my list, right? But again, how do I have the ability to judge? He's a bust in the Premier League, but he's not a bust of all time. The guy scored so many goals at Atletico Madrid and at Monaco. He did brilliant things in order to get to that level. So this is where I tread lightly in this conversation. I could say Torres is a bust going to Chelsea, 60 million, never really hit the heights. But have you watched tape of Fernando Torres for Liverpool before he went to Chelsea?
So this is exactly why, sorry to cut you off, I consider Darko Milicic not a bust. You watch anybody who watched his draft tape. This is the guy who was taking over Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, and Carmelo Anthony. Oh my God! As we're gonna say, it's
the fact that they went on to obtain such great things, it just didn't bode well for the guy.
Right, just didn't work. But they even said it. They say it every draft. Man, you show me Darko Milicic's draft tape, his workouts. I'm still taking him second overall.
Yeah, and that's where I think it is a very hard subject to kind of discuss, especially when it comes to world football. Freddie Adu, rightfully so, but where was Freddie Adu bred?
Put on your ignorant hat.
Yeah,
just for a second.
I've got an ignorant hat on.
Put on the ignorant hat.
Yeah.
Ignorant hair gel.
It's there.
Give me 3. It could be specific to a league. It could be specific to or specific to a team. Like we have a Falcao and the Torreses who were partial busts for partial leagues. Who's somebody else?
Fred.
Fred.
On the international stage, Fred. He's a bust for Brazil because when you get Brazil in the World Cup team, host nation, everyone rooting for them, a country that was in turmoil, hoping and grasping at the thought that football could take them back to where they wanted to be, and you get I would say, an embarrassing game against Germany who went on and won. Getting to that stage, though, once again, how can I judge? But Fred, throughout that whole tournament, was 2, 3, 4 levels below each of his teammates.
It was you and Jenk, I think, who might have done a clip together at that point. I could be wrong, but one of you two said Brazil has the best name in football and the worst name in football.
Yeah.
They have Fred
and they have
Hulk. And it's both ends of the spectrum.
It was encompassed on how they both played. Hulk
plays like Hulk.
Might not have all the talent in the world, but he plays like Hulk.
No,
and Fred,
but his leg, we're throwing it in post. Show the picture.
His leg is huge.
You know what's not a bust? His leg.
And then Fred played like Fred Flintstone after a bottle of Grey Goose. Like he was...
First the Flintstone's getting a handle of some top shelf alcohol.
Maybe it found its way through the generations. But again, I like the point you made. And by the way, this doesn't just have to be the majority of sports that we are talking about, but I do want to get back on the conversation about American sports. Is college
we hype up more busts.
College gives you a window into the potential, right? So it's like it almost puts people on this pedestal. They're like, look at how good these guys are in college. Look at Derrick Rose and his phenomenal run. Jason considers it one of the best college performances of all time.
It's one of the best college point guard seasons of all time. Even though he didn't finish the job, it was an amazing season.
And again, it's unfair now that people will consider Derrick Rose not a bust because he's still phenomenally talented, but his body could not withstand playing at that level when he got into the professional stage. So when it comes to football, I always had the take that you can criticize guys. Like Tom Cleverley is criticized, Fellaini is criticized. But these guys did something spectacular to get there. Fellaini had great seasons at Everton, was always an outlet. But then when you put him in front of the audience at Manchester United with that,
giant hair,
the amount of...
you said
I was
the
like, I did this right here.
Hair.
I did this right here. I was like, with that expectation, he's a bust. He's a bust for Manchester United. But again, there's so many players that I could stay at that level. Like Shevchenko coming to Chelsea.
No, don't do it yet. Speed round.
Who are we going with? All right. Speed
30
round
seconds.
of what?
30 seconds on the clock.
I'm going to name my footballing bust.
And these are specific to teams and leagues. They're not overall. We're not trying to be mean. And go.
Zlatan at Barcelona. Shevchenko at Chelsea. Ricky Lambert at Liverpool. Andy Carroll at Liverpool. This is going to be a trait.
Oh my God.
Who else? Man.
Fellaini at United.
Fellaini at Manchester United.
Falcao at Chelsea.
Falcao at Chelsea and Manchester United. Di Maria at Manchester United. This is all in recent terms, by the way.
10 seconds.
Tons. All right. Who else at
Louis Van Gaal at Manchester
United? Louis Van Gaal at Manchester United. What about at Real Madrid?
4,
Jesus.
3,
no.
2, 1. Impressive.
Yeah, there was some. But Real Madrid, again, like when you go to Real Madrid, Gareth Bale was considered a bust when they didn't win. He was considered great when they won the Champions League, and he was considered a bust the season in between.
No, Gareth Bale's the fandom bipolar scale.
Yes, of course he is.
They hate Bale all season. He bails him out with a goal to win the Champions League. They love him. Then he plays 2 bad weeks of form in the beginning of the 2015-16 season. They hate him again, and they talk about how much they hate him, at least in the media and the hype around him. And then he starts playing well, and he's like, well, we'll see what happens. And then he's instrumental in the Champions League again, and now he's carrying Wales.
Yeah. So, Jason, throwing it back to you. I don't need to
some other busts.
Throwing my clock. I just want to know from your own franchise history in the Knicks, who's someone, like, do you consider Carmelo a guy that comes in with such expectation, expected to bring success? Is that a bust?
Carmelo is a bust for the organization because we have won one playoff series since getting him. And this is a guy who has led the league in scoring before and is a prolific scorer. And unfortunately, the NBA is moving in a very different direction than Carmelo Anthony's type of game. And he doesn't pass and all these things. The Knicks organization in general has been a front office bust for the past 14 years. It hasn't been since like 2000, 2001 that we've even been able to court a team who can compete for a playoff position in the Eastern Conference. But in terms of NBA busts, I'm the one who's not going to throw as Greg Oden. I don't consider a bust because, again, the injuries, things you cannot foresee, cannot make you a bust. To me, a bigger bust is guys like Anthony Bennett right now, who it's a little early to tell. He's only been in the league for 2-3 years, but he was a #1 overall pick, and he is not playing like one. Kwame Brown was a bust, came out of high school, played, was not injured, had small hands, was atrocious. At the NBA level, the professional level, Sebastian Telfair, all these high school guys that used to come out of high school and go right to the NBA because it's so easy to overhype the guys that make it work. Kobe Bryant came out of high school. Why am I missing?
LeBron James.
LeBron James came out of high school. It's not Grant.
Kevin
Garnett. Kevin Garnett came out of high school. Durant played at Texas. Garnett came out of high school. There's only a few that are become legendary out of high school, while most of them became busts. Now we have the one-and-done problem. In the NFL, continuing with that at least, my God, Ryan Leaf. Dan, throw some Ryan Leaf action that way. Who else from the NFL would you consider, like Jamarcus Russell's more recently?
There was a spate of guys for a while, like Achilles Smith.
Oh, my God, yeah, Achilles Smith. They were saying, what, Mandriarch for the Colts? I mean, there's been a string of busts. I think the NFL is like has more busts because I think how much we put on the college level for the NFL. How many people watch?
Notoriously, when you say to someone who's a bust in any sport, you look at someone who's had a massive fall from grace. Like, I look at Dwight Howard and how fantastic he was at Orlando, and you look at his performance at the Lakers, you consider that a bust, the way that he played for the Lakers.
Everybody, Tim Couch, Jeff George, Braylon Edwards I thought was a huge bust.
Yeah.
Braylon Edwards had every sign of being a great wide receiver in the NFL. What happened?
What happened?
We're missing some sports in baseball. Carl Crawford was a bust once after he got all the steals with the Rays. Edwin, name me some busts for baseball off the top of your head. Go. Edwin, do it. 3, 2, 1. The Upton brothers. Now the Upton brothers aren't even that
So
bad.
that is a quite interesting thought. What about individual athletes?
What about golf?
I was going to say, well, of course, Tiger's comeback, but then
Tiger's one of the greatest golfers of all time.
Right, but do you know how many people would say that, nowadays Tiger's a bust, which is just an asinine argument because he was the greatest of all time.
Tiger's like 99.9% of the reason that golf
is
got
the way it is.
sponsorships.
I'm trying to enlighten you, Jason, to how narrow-minded sports fans will be when it comes to certain
golf?
things. Well, golf.
Rocco Mediate because he had his one good run. I like Rocco though.
I would say Sergio Garcia's a bust for how much potential he has to never have delivered a major tournament. Lee Westwood.
Do you know what makes me crazy about Sergio Garcia? He takes an hour. Have you ever played with a guy like Sergio Garcia where you
I've
just kind
played with so many of them, and I launch tees.
and you kind of sit there and you're like, no, it's fine. We have literally all day.
Yeah. Oh, no, shit. No, that was a wrong practice swing. I had to move that bit of grass. All right, there you go.
Yeah, but Sergio does the up and down.
I know. Non-stop.
Up.
I think it might be a Spanish thing because Nadal does it when he's playing tennis. Like, he needs to pick out his shots from his ass at least 3 or 4 times before he serves or before he receives a serve.
We missing any sports? Bowling, darts, pool,
Oh, Tim
NASCAR?
Henman, by the way, if you don't know who that is, for tennis, the British player who British media loved to hype up non-stop, never, ever delivered. But you know who did? Andy Boy Murray. Wow. Who's not a bust.
Not a bust. All right, comment below with, man, you have to find so many sports. Comment below with who is the biggest bust across all of sports, or who's on your Mount Rushmore of busts. And then we'll throw in like a piece of, what's a nice mountain in England?
I'm not from England, Jason.
The hills of Scotland. Notting Hill.
That's a movie.
Like, favorite, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.